Hello there, and welcome back to the booth here at Pro Tour Oath of the Gatewatch. I'm honored to be joined by Eric Froelich, the Hall of Famer here, as we work our way into the second semifinal match. Eric's going to be here with us for this whole round, covering Patrick Dickmann against Ivan Floch. The players are ready. Let's head out of the feature match area. Hello and welcome to coverage of Pro Tour Oath of the Gatewatch. I'm Marshall Sutcliffe in the booth with Eric Froelich, and we are ready for our second semifinal match here, Eric. As we head down to the feature match area, we see our two players. This is Patrick Dickmann from Germany. He's on Affinity. This is his second Pro Tour top 8. And his opponent, Ivan Floch. This is his third. Ivan Floch from Slovakia. And,
in a very short period.
Yes. He's he did seem to really kind of come into his own. This is actually, he's played 27 Pro Tours in his career versus only 9 for Dickmann, so he is the much more experienced Pro Tour competitor, but Floch kind of turned the corner late there and just has banged out a couple of top 8s here. Now, let's talk a little bit about the matchup for us here, Eric. Colorless Eldrazi for Floch and Affinity for Dickmann.
So this is very similar to the quarterfinal matchup we saw that Luis Scott Vargas ended up playing out against Pascal Maynard. It's going to play out very similarly. It is a big advantage for the Eldrazi deck to be on the play, but it's not a great matchup. Affinity is very fast. Not being able to come out with, let's say, a Chalice of the Void for 0, which Floch was not able to do, it is definitely a setback. After sideboarding, it gets better. They get gut shots. They get cards like Pithing Needle that can turn off a card like Cranial Plating, Arcbound Ravager, Steel Overseer, some of the best cards in the matchups. Or in all the matchups, I guess those are Affinity's big hitters. So getting access to those cards is huge, but game 1 can be pretty tough for every deck against Affinity, and being on the play is a pretty nice edge there. So I think that Ivan Floch might have a little bit of an advantage going in, getting to start on the play in game 1, and then 4 sideboarder games, but I expect a really close match.
All right, well, there is a Ratchet Bomb here on the second turn of the game for Floch. He decides not to use it to take out the Mem Knight. Now he's got a much better target with Steel Overseer. He's going to put 1 counter on end step here on his Ratchet Bomb and maybe tick that thing up to 2. We'll see. The most important cards in the deck tend to cost 2 for Patrick Dickmann, but the Ratchet Bomb can be pretty slow here.
Yeah, one of those important cards is already in play. Steel Overseer has the ability to take over an entire game on its own.
Well, Ivan Floch agrees with you on that one, Eric, and decides to use a Dismember to take it out immediately. And he's got a nice little follow-up here, too, with an Eldrazi Mimic, so a pretty productive turn there for Floch.
Yeah, but right now he's playing fair Magic. Something that we've noted in this top 8 is that a lot of the decks have kind of been playing out almost like vintage decks with Mishra's Workshops and Mox Opals and being able to cast spells. I believe turn 2 of the first semifinal, in one of the games, there's 12 mana worth of spells already cast. And we're seeing a little bit more fair Magic. No Mox Opal from Dickmann and no Eye of Ugin or Eldrazi Temple from Floch, and so that's going to slow the decks down dramatically. That's not really where this Eldrazi deck wants to be, although not the most explosive start from his opponent, so he's able to not really fall too far behind quite yet. Although Master of Ethereum is one of the best cards in this matchup, it's not easy to be dealt with. Ratchet Bomb is a little bit slow in getting there.
Yeah, it's interesting because Dickmann has been able to just sort of stay one step ahead of that Ratchet Bomb. Floch is going to put it up to 2 counters as he draws his card for the turn here. He still doesn't have any creatures on the board after his Eldrazi Mimic just traded for a Mem Knight.
So he's going to be looking to preferably remove this Master of Ethereum, although that's just not a possibility. The Ratchet Bomb can't kill anything. Inkmoth Nexus threatens to become a creature just by tapping itself, which would make Master of Ethereum a 6/6, so even Dismember is not quite enough to deal with the Master right now.
And again, more fair Magic here. I mean, Matter Reshaper is a very nice card, but it isn't the explosive cards that we're used to seeing here from the Colorless Eldrazi deck. And Ivan Floch is going to have to just sort of slog through here, it looks like.
So with the Ghost Quarter in play, that's a pretty good card against Affinity. They don't play a lot of basics, if any. Most of them play 1. Dickmann plays 1 island. That actually could combine with something like a Dismember to kill the Master of Ethereum. He's already used one copy Dismember, however. His hand, let's see. Looks like he's got an Endless one and maybe an Eldrazi Mimic.
Yeah.
So not the best hand when you don't have any Eye of Ugins or Eldrazi Temples. 4/4 for 4 is fine, but look at what Patrick Dickmann is adding to the board. Arcbound Ravager threatens to potentially take over. There's a Ratchet Bomb, but that doesn't stop Modular. So
Yeah, this is a tough spot here for Floch. He's got the Ratchet Bomb, but Dickmann can just run the Ravager right into it. Doesn't even matter. It just forces him to use it at a time maybe when he wouldn't want to.
yeah, the Ghost Quarter here is pretty huge, or Dickmann would be threatening potentially a poison kill next turn.
Okay, well, he's not done yet. Looks like a Vault Scourge here.
Now, Ratchet Bomb can take out Ravager and Vault Scourge, which is good. That's a reasonable start. That is probably what Floch is debating right now, whether that's the play that he wants to make. Looks like Nexus is getting turned on. Ghost Quarter should just be a full strip mine at this point. There's just one island in the deck. Dickmann's already played it.
Floch knows that, too. They do have access to deck lists here.
So he's got an interesting decision of if he's going to use the Ratchet Bomb, whether he wants to do it now. If he ends up blocking with the Matter Reshaper and hits a card that costs 2 mana, that could be a negative combo with the Ratchet Bomb. If, let's say, he flips up an Eldrazi Mimic or something along those lines, maybe a Spell Skite, he's not going to want to blow up the Ratchet Bomb. That being said, there's a reasonable chance he's looking to just take up to 3, get rid of this Master of Ethereum, and hope to deal with the board in another way. He's falling pretty far behind, though, and dealing with the Arcbound Ravager and Vault Scourge is not going to be easy.
Okay, well, it looks like he's going to chump block the Master of Ethereum with the Matter Reshaper here. It's going to hit a Blinkmoth Nexus.
So Dickmann's empty-handed, but his board is very much flooded. So if Ivan decides to use the Ratchet Bomb here, he's going to be facing, well, he'll sack the Vault Scourge to the Ravager at the very least to put 2 counters on something else. He'll probably sack Springleaf Drum as well. He's got plenty of mana. Maybe a Darksteel Citadel, depending on whether he thinks Master of Ethereum is going to be dealt with, to kind of have 2 huge threats out there,
Okay.
and a big Meta Knight and a Master. So Floch does not take up the Ratchet Bomb or use it quite yet.
Yeah, he also didn't use his Ghost Quarter there.
Right. There's no reason to use the Ghost Quarter now, just because it can be done at instant speed. If he wants to take a mana away from Dickmann, he can do it during Dickmann's upkeep. He won't have any more basics to search out. Looks like he drew a Thought-Knot Seer, which is a big body. No cards in hand, so not the most impressive Thought-Knot Seer. And again, kind of constrained. Not having this Eye of Ugin or Eldrazi Temple means he is playing quote-unquote fair magic.
So he's going to go ahead and pop the Ratchet Bomb now before playing the Thought-Knot Seer. Is he just trying to not let Patrick know what he's going to be facing down as far as the 4/4 body goes?
Yeah, he's going to basically be forced to sack this Ratchet Bomb, and so giving your opponent as little information as possible. Maybe force them to make a mistake. If you're going to empty your hand and they know that you're not going to be able to dismember something, it is a lot of information when you're deciding how big to make a potential creature. Like if he's going to go all in on something like Meta Knight and Floch has a removal spell, that's just a huge advantage. So now Meta Knight becomes a 4/4. So
Hey.
the 4/4s or I guess it becomes a 5/5 with Master of Ethereum. So he has a chance to cast a 5/5 Endless one. Thought-Knot Seer is going to be a little bit small on this board where he's got a pair of 5/5s on the other side. So Endless one is the choice.
This worked out pretty well for Floch.
It worked out pretty well, but he's not winning.
He's not. He hasn't turned it around here, but
yeah, he's gotten himself in a much better position. The board was very clogged with permanents, and it's not as much anymore. Well, that's a good one.
oh, cranial plating off the top for Dickmann.
It's not actually outstanding. because of the Master Ethereum getting bigger is what makes the cranial plating so good. Putting it on the Nexus and giving a bunch of poison counters, it really doesn't do much because Ghost Quarter just threatens to take out any Inkmoth Nexuses before they're lethal, so not a big threat there. Putting on the Memnite just means it's still going to trade with Endless One, but because plating is actually representing the 6th artifact, Floch had to tap his Ghost Quarter so Inkmoth Nexus can turn into an artifact, allowing Master of Ethereum to survive this trade. And that makes plating great. Just any artifact essentially is pumping up Master Ethereum to being bigger than Endless One.
Yeah, it's already got 5 toughness here with the option to pick up another.
See, if any of Ivan's lands had been a double land, either the Temple or the Eye, he could have played a 5/5 Endless One and left off Ghost Quarter, which would have meant that Endless One could actually just trade with Master of Ethereum, and Inkmoth Nexus wouldn't be much of a threat. And on that board state, things look great for Ivan because he has plenty of creatures in his deck that can potentially trade with the 4/4 Memnite. One of them, Thought Knot Seer, he already has in hand. So
Yeah.
a lot of good options there. Instead, he's going to take a ton of damage.
So 12 damage was the total there.
Yeah, that's not a small amount of damage.
And Floch is going to trade a Memnite for an Endless One, and he needs to get back on the board. He draws Reality Smasher here.
See, that's just a little bit not good enough because the Inkmoth Nexus, again, can just turn into a creature. So if Floch's able to find any artifact, he can make Master Ethereum bigger than Reality Smasher.
Yeah, that's going to be an interesting draw set because he did lose his Memnite there.
Yeah, and with no island left in his deck, we're basically looking at 4 Glimmer Voids as the only things that Dickmann can possibly draw that would not make Master bigger. I guess no, it would have to be a 4 casting cost artifact, so there's nothing else. This is a pretty tough spot. I mean, Dismember would be a fantastic draw. Did not find that, though. If he had... no. Matter Reshaper would have been decent, because at least it threatens a couple things, plus is a body that can chump block and potentially upgrade. But nothing in his hand really stands out here.
Floch does have a Mutavault and a Blinkmoth Nexus as well.
Yeah, if there was one less permanent in play, one less Darksteel Citadel, basically everything Floch had would threaten to trade with this Master of Ethereum, including, just blocking with multiple man lands and pumping with Blinkmoth. Looks like he's just playing a chump blocker, though.
Yep. He's just going to play the Eldrazi Mimic and pass the turn here. And is this going to take out the Inkmoth right now? Draw a card for the turn. Let's see what he found. Vault Scourge.
Yeah, I think that Floch's plan here was kind of hoping that Dickmann made a mistake and didn't play an artifact before combat so that he could trade a Mutavault and Eldrazi Mimic for this Master of Ethereum. That's not a mistake that an experienced modern player is going to make, though.
Yeah, and Patrick Dickmann fits that description perfectly.
Absolutely. So something's going to have to chump. This thing is way more than lethal. And now Dickmann's going to have 2 lethal threats next turn.
And he is setting that up here. Ivan Floch down to 4 life. Just had an anemic draw here. Nothing really coming together for him. He's been able to deploy his spells. It's just nothing that really mirrored that punch that we've seen from this Colorless Eldrazi deck. And as a result, Patrick Dickmann's kind of been able to just craft ways to get in damage repeatedly here, and he's got Floch down to 4.
Yeah, if that Eldrazi Temple had come down on an Ivan even pretty late in the game, let's say turn 3, I think that Ivan would have had a pretty good chance at becoming at least stable now. Whether he would have won the game, I have no idea. There's a lot of big draws that Dickmann has available to him, but these last couple turns, he wouldn't have been taking 12 damage, I'll tell you that. So it would have been a very interesting game if he could have played a 5/5 and still left up Ghost Quarter, but because he was pinched on mana and didn't draw any of his Ancient Tomb effects, that's just too tough. So he can activate Nexus, pump it, and trade with this Vault Scourge, chump blocking Master of Ethereum, but there's still just going to be 2 lethal threats next turn, and Ivan's going to have even less mana available to him next turn than he does this turn, so...
6 artifacts, 1 power plus 1 pump, so 8 life for me. I'll be at 24.
You can see that Patrick's quite precise with his operations here. And that's
Probably
gonna
should have
do it.
equipped there, but it's definitely not going to matter. There's just nothing that Ivan can do with so little mana against two
That's
lethal
right.
threats.
And that is going to do it for Game 1. Game 1 goes to Patrick Dikmann from Germany as he defeats Ivan Floch in this best of 5. We'll be back right after these messages.
Play in Pro Tour Gauntlet events starting Wednesday on Magic Online and test drive one of the top decks from this Pro Tour. For more information, go to mtgo.com. Standard is the name of the game at Oath of the Gatewatch Game Day. Join the action on February 13th and 14th at your local game store. Visit magic.wizards.com/game-day for more information.
And welcome back to the feature match area here in Atlanta. Marshall Sutcliffe in the booth with Eric Froelich. We had a chance to chat with our players about their sideboard plans for this match.
Okay, Patrick, you could be playing as many as 4 sideboarded games here in this top 8. Tell me what your plan is for this semifinal matchup. Which cards are coming in, which are coming out?
Well, I'm not gonna board too much because I don't want to divert my main deck plan pretty much. I have to be aggressive in this matchup. We're not interacting too much and both trying to kill each other past each other. So when I'm on the play, I'll just be taking out 1 Mem Knight and 1 Steel Overseer and boarding 2 Ancient Grudges against against all the artifacts that he has. He might have Spell Guides. He's definitely playing Ratchet Bombs and boards up to 3, I believe. And there's also Piffing Needle, so there's plenty of targets for Ancient Grudge, and I think it has some value in the matchup. And I mean, Steel Overseer is very good in game 1, but in games 2, in the sideboard games pretty much, it's a little worse because they bought in Gutshot, and so it's an easy cut. And when I'm on the draw, I expect Ivan to have all 4 Chalice of the Void in the main deck. He's probably taking them out when he's on the draw, but he'll definitely have them when he's on the play. So I'll be taking out 2 Man Knights so that it does not hit me as hard when it is played for 0. And I'll be taking 1 Thoughtcast because I think I don't need the extra card draw. And I'll be bringing in 2 Ancient Grudges and 1 Dismember just to maybe catch up and kill a big creature for value, to gain tempo back. And that's pretty much all I'm going to do.
Okay, Patrick, thank you, and good games the rest of the way here in the top 8.
Thank you.
All right, Ivan, as many as 80% of your games could be sideboarded. What's the plan in this semifinal matchup for games 2 and beyond?
Okay, sideboarding is a little bit tricky because you sideboard differently on play and differently on draw. It's basically because of Chalice of the Void. It's good on play when you can play for 0 and turn 1, and they have lots of 0 mana artifacts. But it's not so great on draw. You can play it for 0, but they already have the 0 mana artifacts in play. So what do we do is we sideboard in Warping Veil, Ratchet Bomb, Biting Needle, and Gutshot. Those 7 cards, which are obviously great against Affinity. And on play, we side out Simian Spirit Guides. We keep Chalice of the Void in. And we also side out Spell Guide because, it's not that 2 Spell Guides because it's not that good. And also we need to keep our artifact count lower because they can sideboard the Ancient Grudge. And yeah, that's what we do. We also side out 1 more card. I don't remember which one. Oh yeah, 1 Meteoric Shaper because it's often tempo based, and Rick Shaper is value card, so it's not that fast. So that's what we do on play. On draw it's the same. We just keep Chalices and we just side out Chalices and keep Simian Spirit Guides.
Okay.
Yep.
Ivan, thank you very much.
All right.
Good games the rest of the way here in the top 8.
Okay, thank you very much.
And welcome back to the feature match area here in Atlanta. So we've got 1 game down here, Eric, between Patrick Dickmann and Ivan Floch, and you got a chance to hear what their sideboard plans were like. How do you think that's going to change the numbers, the matchup, given what you heard from them?
Well, it's definitely a big advantage for the face-to-face Channel Fireball deck. They get to board in a lot of cards, and they are very effective cards. A lot of sideboard cards against Affinity are quite good. These might not be on the same level as something like Ancient Grudge and Shatterstorm, but they are very strong. And the face-to-face Channel Fireball Eldrazi deck is explosive, so it threatens to win the game potentially as fast as Affinity anyway. So any card that you're able to add to interact with them is a huge benefit. So Ratchet Bomb is very strong. Chalice on the play as Ivan mentioned, it can be excellent. It can shut down Men Knight, Ornithopter, and Mox Opal, which Mox Opal might be the most important card in the deck for really getting off to a great start. Definitely on the broken side of things. And yeah, I think that's a pretty big advantage for Floch to have after sideboard versus game one. I don't think it necessarily makes him a big favorite in sideboarded games, but the ones where he's on the play, I would expect him to have a decent advantage, and it's a lot closer on the draw than it would have been in the game one in the matchup.
All right, you can see the players are taking a look at their openers here as we work our way towards game two in this best of 5 semifinal match to decide who will face JC Tao and the blue-red Eldrazi in the finals. Well, you get a pretty good look at Ivan Floch's hand, which it looks like he's thinking about. Ivan will be on the play this game.
Yeah, Ivan's hand looked solid, although I didn't get to see everything. He had Needle, which is nice. Looked like he had both an Eye and a Temple, which is definitely what you want as far as mana. Doesn't have his best cards. It didn't look like there was a Thought-Knot or Reality Smasher, but some endless ones that can be pretty big threats quickly. Pithing Needle's an interesting card in that it is excellent, but you can't really proactively play it because Arcbound Ravager and Cranial Plating and various cards are going to be extremely effective against you, and if you name the wrong one, it's pretty punishing. Although if you play a Pithing Needle after Plating's in play, sometimes the damage has already been done.
All right, well, it turns out the turn one play there for Floch, Endless One, off of an Eldrazi Temple, so he's made it 2-2. Dickmann went Blink Moth Nexus into Signal Pest before passing back, and now we're on Ivan Floch's second turn of the game.
It looks like he's going to have a 4/4 Endless One available to him. It looked like there was also a Matter Reshaper in that hand. So a decent aggressive start in that he's able to present a 3-turn clock from here without anything else if he's able to play this 4/4 Endless One, which is good. It's not necessarily outstanding. It's not the dream draw. I think he'd much prefer a Thought-Knot Seer this turn. Would love a Reality Smasher next turn, which isn't currently in hand, but it looks like he went with Matter Reshaper.
He went with Matter Reshaper instead.
Fair.
Little 1-2 punch here for Dickmann as he adds a Steel Overseer to the battlefield here. And boom, Ivan Floch trying to take the aggressive route here. He's going to get in for 5 and knock Dickmann down to 13.
Well, these creatures aren't blocking Signal Pest or Nexus anyway, so pretty reasonable to get in. It looks like Dickmann's hand, does he have 3 Glimmer Voids, 2 Arcbound Ravagers, so a full house?
He does. You take a look at it on your screen there. And it's going to be Pithing Needle naming Steel Overseer. And he even still gets to follow up with that Endless One. And it's still for 4 this turn. So a big turn there for Floch. Gets in for 5, shuts down the Overseer, and even adds 4 more power to his battlefield here.
So it's possible that
Yikes.
Dickmann is considering going a Ravager route and trying to win with something like Infect because this clock is going to be incredibly quick. It looks like Ivan's got a Ghost Quarter and a Nexus as the last 2 cards in his hand, which both do a great job of blocking potential Nexus on the other side of the board. So actually a pretty great defense for that potential line of play.
Yeah, Dickmann just says, yep, you're up.
Was that another Ravager drawn by Dickmann? So he actually had 3 Glimmer Voids, 3 Ravagers on that turn?
We don't have a name for that.
Yeah, it's not a poker hand. Well, the one name we may have for it is potentially Too Slow. The Eldrazi deck has come out, again, without its best cards, except it had its best lands. And then you can see what the deck is capable of.
Yeah, this game's playing out so much differently from game 1 from Ivan Floch's standpoint.
Floch contemplating his attacks. He has the option of turning on a Mutavault, sending that in the red zone as well. He's not under a lot of pressure here.
No, he's not, and he's got Dickmann down to 13 already as well, looking to shut the door on him as quickly as possible.
Ravager is a scary card to see whenever you're facing down Affinity. But Dickmann doesn't even have very many artifacts. His lands, he needs to pay mana to turn into artifacts, and sacking them isn't a great proposition. Only with 2 creatures in play, so no Mox Opals, no Springleaf Drums. Like, really not an explosive draw from this Affinity deck at all. Dickmann's going to chump block the biggest creature, avoid taking the 4 damage. Steel Overseer has been Pithing Needled, so that'll get sacrificed to Arcbound Ravager, get it a little bit bigger.
Blinkmoth go from Floch. Dickmann's down to 10, halfway there for Floch to even this matchup at 1 game apiece. Mox Opal. There's that second Ravager.
And here's the third one.
And there's triple Ravager on the battlefield here.
That's going to present a pretty impressive ground force where the Endless one is looking a little bit small finally. Now, if Floch's able to draw a removal spell of some sort, that could completely change things and respond to a potential modular.
How about Chalice of the Void?
Yeah, right on time with that Chalice of the Void.
Little late there for Floch. You can kind of see it on his face there too, like, oh.
Yeah, Chalice on 2 would have been pretty good when Dickmann had 3 Ravagers in his hand. Now, not so much. I think Floch is debating whether he wants to send this Matter Reshaper in, cash it in for a card and potentially an artifact or 2. On the other side of the table, of course, that doesn't really add up much. The modular counters make sure that the creatures stay quite large. So you're not progressing in too big of a way when you make a play like that. He also probably wants to leave up some amount of mana to be able to activate Nexus or use something like Ghost Quarter, because Inkmoth Nexus is starting to get pretty threatening. It already represents potentially lethal poison counters right now. If he was able to activate Nexus, he could use the other Nexus to pump it. The Signal Pest would make it a 3 power. The Ravagers could make it 5, 7, 9, 10, 11, 12. 12 poison, potentially. If he were to sacrifice everything, attack with Signal Pest, use Blinkmoth Nexus, turn it on, sacrifice that.
Well, there's Ghost Quarter. Looks like he's going to play the Chalice on 0 here.
Yeah, it'll shut off a couple of Mem Knights. 2 of them got boarded out. Ornithopters and Mox Opal was already pretty much turned off, although it is a +1/+1 counter at this point with Arcbound Ravagers. You can sacrifice it and then play the second copy. Dickmann's done a really great job of stabilizing this board. Something that Affinity is not always great at doing. It's very much an aggressive deck that is capable of going all in as early as turn 3 to finish the game off. But these Ravagers just do a pretty great work at gumming up the ground.
What's the big threat here? You know, if you're Ivan Floch, let's say you want to attack with your 4/4 and your 3/2 or something along those lines, what ends up happening on the other side? Because this looks so spread out right now. Give us a visual for what happens.
Well, each Ravager represents putting 2 counters on another Ravager, potentially. If you want to sacrifice, let's say you want to sacrifice that 1/1 Ravager to the 2/2 Ravager. At that point, you're going to get the +1/+1 counter for sacrificing, and you're going to get the +1/+1 counter for the modular because it had 1 on it. And so at that point, your Ravager is becoming a 4/4. You could sacrifice a Mox Opal or any other artifact to make it a 5/5, and now you've got the biggest creature on the board, and you're only sacrificing 1, maybe 2 things.
Ooh.
Ratchet Bomb changes things quite a bit.
So here's
That's
a
a great
Ratchet
draw.
Bomb for Floch off the top of the library here. And is he just going to tick that thing up to 2 and threaten those Ravagers?
That's definitely what your plan would be right now. Things could change. depending on what Dickmann's able to do and assemble. But that's a great plan for Floch. It does mean that there will be a giant signal pass potentially on the other side of the board, but that's a lot less of a threat than 3 Arcbound Ravagers that can kind of move counters around and do a lot of great things.
All right, well, this is interesting because now this game all of a sudden has this clock looming over it with that Ratchet Bomb. We get to watch it tick up.
Absolutely.
And we'll see if Dickmann can come up with a line, because prior to that, the players hadn't really attacked each other in a while. We're kind of seeing what they're drawing, developing their boards, figuring things out. But not anymore.
I love Floch's position right now. That Ratchet Bomb was an excellent draw. The fact that he just gets to move it up to 1 after this turn to threaten the signal pass, and like Dickmann is kind of forced to make a move, because then the Ratchet Bomb just goes up to 2, and at that point it's online. So you really have to do something in the next couple turns, or your board is going to be severely impacted.
All right, so it looks like Dickmann is going to take the line of trying to poison Floch out here by attacking with the 2 signal pests and the Ink Moth. But we've seen that there is a Ghost Quarter sitting there on the battlefield for Ivan Floch. So if he wants to break up the poison aspect of this plan, he can.
Yeah, there is no reach with poison. Reach is something that we use to describe decks that are able to potentially go over the top. There's a big board stall, and let's say you have lightning bolts or direct damage. That's reach, where the game is kind of dragged out, and you draw your gut shot when someone's at 1.
Well,
Not that anyone would ever do that.
That never happens. Yeah.
That's just a potential line of play. You can't really do that with poison, so Ivan can really play with his life total as a resource and not have to worry about getting poisoned out, which is nice because he has all these resources in play that can deal with this poison creature, but he also wants to keep his lands in play. He's actually not that far away from turning on Ayavugan, at which point this game just becomes basically a runaway for Floch.
Floch drew a Blinkmoth Nexus for the turn here.
See, that's a decent draw because they combine together to pump each other. Plus, it's just a land away from turning on Ayavugan. This Ratchet Bomb is ticking up. Floch has tons of life to work with. He's put himself in a really nice position, which is something that the face-to-face Channel Fireball Eldrazi deck is just really good at doing. Again, he didn't draw his Reality Smashers or Thought-Knot Seers. Those are kind of the all-stars in the deck, the really strong cards. But he still has himself at 18 life against Affinity on turn, I don't even know, a large number, which is pretty impressive.
Yeah, it is impressive. He's doing it with the blunter tools in the deck here. You see a pair of Endless Ones on the battlefield for Floch. He did get off to a quick start and put Patrick down to 9, but after Patrick stabilized this board, we've kind of been in a holding pattern. Of course, the Ratchet Bomb is the thing that threatens to really break up that pattern here.
Yeah.
Another...
Patrick's done a great job of playing this game with the cards he was dealt, essentially. His draw was a little bit clunky. He wasn't able to get out of the gates fast. He was basically looking at turn 4, deploying 2 Ravagers without having dealt any damage. But he's put himself in a board state where he had completely stabilized, and this Ratchet Bomb is the card that turned it around. So a really great way of navigating the position he was dealt from Dickmann. It's just Floch has kind of the trump card here. Ratchet Bomb seems like it's going to be really good, although if he kills all of these Ravagers right now, a Signal Pest is going to get huge. There are Nexuses that can chump block it, but it will still be the biggest creature on the battlefield. So what happens now, he sacrifices the Ratchet Bomb for 2. Dickmann gets to sacrifice as many artifacts as he wants to the Ravager, plus each Ravager itself is going to represent 2 more counters. So if he sacrifices Mox Opal, so now he's got a pair of 2/2s. If he sacrifices 1 2/2 to the other one, that one becomes a 5/5. And the next one sacrifices becomes a 7/7. All 7 of those counters at a minimum get to go on a Signal Pest, which has evasion. Of course, Floch has multiple Blinkmoth Nexuses now, so he's got blockers for that. He's also at 18 life. So a lot of good things happening for Floch.
This has been a really cool game. And Ivan Floch right now putting the pressure on Patrick Dickmann by cracking that Ratchet Bomb and forcing Patrick to react to him.
Yeah, I agree. This has been an excellent game. We have a lot of Affinity, a lot of Eldrazi decks doing well, and not everyone's going to be thrilled with that necessarily because they're not necessarily the most interactive decks in general, although this game we're seeing quite different. We're definitely seeing a lot of play. The game that almost resembles really Broken Limited. There's a lot of creature combat and deciding where these counters are going to go and when to use their removal spell. A lot of cool things going on. So Dickmann's deciding to spread out his Arcbound Ravager tokens. So he's going to have 3 bigger Signal Pests, and this is going to make it a lot harder for Ivan Floch to actually be able to just chump block with things like Blinkmoth Nexus. Of course, if Signal Pests start coming in, Floch's Ground Force is 9 power worth of creatures right there, so it's not the best spot in the world right now for Dickmann. He needs to also have a creature that's going to be big enough that it can actually block this Endless one, or it's just a really tough spot. So one of the Signal Pests becomes a 5/6. He's got a 2/3 and then still an 0/1. Now the 2/3 doesn't even have good attacks either because Blinkmoth Nexus can turn on and it can pump itself, and the other Blinkmoth Nexus pumps it as well. And so that's a 3/3 right there, which will trade because of the Signal Cry, but Battle Cry, but Signal Pest Cry. But that's a pretty good trade when you're way ahead in life and you've got all the creatures on the board.
So, after the dust settles on that, you can see what's left of Dickmann's board, and Floch places land and passes.
Yeah, Dickmann just keeps drawing Ornithopters, which A of all don't do much, and there's a Chalice of Void on 0, so double doesn't do much. And at this point, Floch has 7 mana to go with his Eye of Ugin.
He's got it.
And so now the onus is on Dickmann to press the issue. He needs to get damage through and win the game quickly, and he doesn't have great attacks because the counterattack is for so much damage, and this Eye of Ugin just has so much inevitability, it's just going to win the game on its own. So this is definitely the rock and hard play situation for a game that Dickmann's fought very valiantly. Very impressed with this play.
Have you seen what's in his hand?
I believe it was 2 Ornithopters.
You are correct.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, being able to cast the Ornithopters would be nice because it at least allows you to continue to attack, and you get some chump blockers.
And it looks like we're done here. Yeah, permanents are being picked up, so that one
definitely looks that way.
Is going to go to Ivan Floch. All right, so game 2 to Floch, and that means that we're tied up at a game apiece. So we're kind of back to where we started.
Yeah,
with,
we're back to where we started, except Dickmann has stolen the play. Floch got to start on the play, which is why I thought he had a reasonable chance to win this match. Being on the play game 1 means that even if you get blown out both games when you're on the draw, those are just games 2 and 4. So if you're able to win all the games on the play, things look great for him. That being said, Dickmann won game 1, so now that Floch won on the play in game 2, Dickmann gets to go back on the play in game 3. If he's able to hold serve throughout this match and wins games 3 and 5, he takes it down. So Floch is going to have to find a way to win at least one of these games on the draw and still has to win on the play, which neither of those things are easy to do. So
right.
Advantage is definitely in Dickmann's side right now.
So earlier, when Ian was in the booth, I had a chat with him about some of the great new Eldrazi cards that we've seen pop up here.
There are a few of
at
them,
the Pro
yes.
Tour. Yeah, but I want to go back in time a little bit with you here, Eric, and let's talk about Arcbound Ravager. As you know, as all the sweet new toys are coming out to play, there were 2 copies of Affinity in this top 8 here, and you know, going back in time a bit, Arcbound Ravager is one of the keys to that deck.
Arcbound Ravager is great. It is a large part of why the artifact lands ended up getting banned in the block format, ended up getting banned in Modern. The combination with Arcbound Ravager is so huge, being able to turn all of your lands into potential counters. You can then move those around. Modular is just such a great ability, and you're basically turning all of your permanents into a bigger fireball later down the road. It makes removal spells look a little bit silly. In one of my first match of Modern in this tournament, I was playing against Affinity. Game 3, I'm on the draw. I have a great hand with turn 2 Lightning Helix or Stony Silence available to me. I'm like, this looks great. And my opponent's able to go turn 1 Arcbound Ravager with Inkmoth Nexus, turn 2 put 4 counters on it, and my Stony Silence does nothing. I don't have Path to Exile.
Two turns later, you're dead.
I was just dead,
Wow.
and that's how powerful Arcbound Ravager is. There's nothing else that really could have done that, and so being able to play around removal spells like Lightning Helix is just not good enough. Path to Exile just doesn't care quite as much. I mean, it's very good against Ravager, but you still just sacrifice, you move counters around. So there aren't great answers to this card, and it's very powerful. I ended up using this card to win the finals of Vintage Super League. That's how good Arcbound Ravager is. It's made its way into my Vintage deck. It was excellent. It is now the cornerstone, I believe, of what a lot of people feel is the best deck in Vintage. It's Arcbound Ravager with Mishra's Workshops, and that's just shows you how good this card is. It is very powerful.
Yeah, incredible card, and it has been around in Modern since the beginning and has been putting up results that whole time. Take a look at our feature match area here as well in Atlanta. It is a beautiful setup down there. You can see some hedrons have kind of poked through the cement on the ground underneath our stage, but they built around them. And just one table left.
They have not done a great job of containing the Eldrazi this weekend. I think our hedrons might be broken.
Yeah, so there's an alignment issue with our hedrons. And,
They're unaligned.
Yeah. And
we only have 3. We need all 4.
So, yeah. The Eldrazi, certainly the breakout deck in Modern here this weekend. Absolutely crushing this tournament. And, all right. Looks like Game 3 is upon us as players are examining their opening hands. Let's see if we're going to get a keep.
We're showing our hands to our spotters. So that makes me feel pretty good about Floch keeping 7. Although Dickmann is back to shuffling, so he's got. I still think Dickmann is a favorite with a reasonable 6 on the play. I think that the matchup is good enough that that's the case. However, if he doesn't have a good 6, and Floch has a pretty good 7, that Floch's definitely very advantaged. So, yeah, this match definitely has been swinging pretty dramatically. Dickmann stealing game 1 on the draw was huge, but he definitely needs to hold serve because winning on the draw is not going to be easy. All right. Let's take a look at Ivan's hand.
What does he have? Why don't you run it down for us here?
Well, looks like he's got Eldrazi Temple, which is a great start. That's the card you really want to see, if not Eye of Ugin. Urborg wastes the other 2 lands in his hand. He's got Ratchet Bomb, which we saw do a ton of work
Big time.
in that last game. The rest of his hand is Gutshot, which is solid in the matchup. It kills a lot of the creatures in play. Signal, Past, Nimnite, and Steel Overseer, most importantly. Matter Reshaper and Eldrazi Mimic, though, are kind of the weaker creatures. Again, we don't see Thought Knots here, which is a card that you'd really love to have, especially if you can get it early, take one of those powerful 2-drops, maybe take a Master of Ethereum. That's great. There aren't really removal spells, so Affinity can't actually deal with the Thought Knots here to get that advantage back, except in combat. And it's a 4/4, so well, it looks like Dickmann did not find a 6 that he could keep.
Oh, no. Ardo immediately going to 5 here.
Okay, now Floch is pretty much in the driver's seat. His hand's not amazing, but it's good. And so Ratchet Bomb is basically guaranteed to trade at least 1 for 1, likely 2 for 1. Gutshot almost guaranteed to trade 1 for 1. Matter Reshaper, it's not the fastest clock, but it's reasonable. He has turn 1 Eldrazi Mimic, so that thing's going to be attacking for 3 potentially on turn 2, and then 5 or more damage each turn after that with multiple removal spells in reserve. That's a solid start. It's not outstanding by any stretch, but it's very good. And yeah, Floch's going to get an extra card every turn off this, too.
You know, kind of interesting. So Floch's going to be on the draw this game.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I'm looking at that Ratchet Bomb in his hand. It's actually better a little later. Like, if you let your opponent know that you have it, doesn't he just have to dump his hand anyway?
I think that's true in most situations, although against Affinity, probably not, because there's so often that you want it on 2 that having it slower is a definite disadvantage. There's not that much you can really play around. If you're going to crack it on 0, it doesn't matter if they know or not. There aren't that many 1s. You're looking at basically Signal Pest, because even though Vault Scourge comes down for 1, it's not a 1 drop.
Actually
so
costs 2. Yep.
there isn't actually much that you can do. It's 0 or 2, and the times we went on 0, it doesn't matter. When you have it on 2, it's great. So Dickmann's hand looks like he's going to lead on Nexus into Vault Scourge, leaving behind Vault Scourge, plating Master of Ethereum. So gonna need a land. Yes.
Okay, so they
Wow,
just
this
backed
is
up
huge.
a little bit here because Floch said, now hold on a second, I want to see what you're doing here, because it looks like Floch is going to go ahead and use his Gutshot here. And what that's effectively doing is cutting Dickmann off of mana.
Yeah, this is a massive, massive swing. Dickmann's plan, he cast the Springleaf Drum just because it was essentially free. He was going to use the Vault Scourge to cast another Vault Scourge. Now he has no creature in play. That Vault Scourge has to wait another turn, and he's even further away from casting other spells in his hand.
Wow.
He can't get a plating down and have a creature next turn. The Master of Ethereum further away. Floch is just starting to pull away. That Gutshot was incredible. So
did Dickmann have another line that he can take there that doesn't expose him to that kind of risk?
He could have just cast the Vault Scourge. It's almost always way worse to do so because you're trading attacking for 1 lifelink for not having your Springleaf Drum in play, which means you're cutting yourself off of a mana next turn. Which means, let's say if he drew a land, he wouldn't be able to play Plating Equip, he wouldn't be able to play Master of Ethereum. That's a huge downside. So getting that drum in play is fantastic. But against Gutshot,
there is some risk there. Yeah.
There usually isn't. If you play a ton of Modern, this is not something that comes up. Ivan Floch was tapped out. So unless you've played this matchup a lot, which nobody has at this point, the odds of getting Gutshot is so small. And Floch found a Reality Smasher. And that just ends the game on the spot. He's attacking for 13 on turn 3.
What just happened? I looked away for half a second, and they were scooping up cards.
Dickmann wasn't dead on board. He could have chump blocked. But then he'd be dead on board.
But then he would just be dead anyway. Okay.
That was incredible.
Well, like I said, these games sometimes come very, very quickly. And we have a conclusion there in our third game. Ivan Floch takes it down. So he's up 2-1 over Patrick Dickmann from Germany.
Yeah, that game was mostly settled before we even started. The Mold of 5 is a huge, huge disadvantage for a deck that really relies on getting a lot of permanents into play and being explosive. You really want that turn 1 Mox Opal and be able to use it. We're down to 5 cards. The odds of finding the Opal is small. The odds of having Metalcraft is small. The odds of piecing together an explosive hand where you have all this mana and these cheap cards, but also your big finisher. It's just hard to do on 5 cards with an Affinity deck. And Floch's draw matched up very well against it. That Gutshot basically just meant, hey, it doesn't matter if I don't draw another card the rest of this game. I'm probably got you beat. This Gutshot, it was just massive. It was a time walk for 0 mana, basically.
I'll tell you what, based on experience just from this weekend, the Gutshot is aptly named. It has been pretty mean when we've seen it go. Sometimes finishing matches. This one effectively put Dickmann way too far behind to really catch up. Another card that's pretty important when it comes to the Affinity deck and the way that it operates as far as mana goes is Springleaf Drum. Let's take a look at that one. Why don't you tell us about Springleaf Drum?
Yeah, Springleaf Drum seems pretty innocuous, doesn't
God,
it?
it sure does. The first time I saw it, I thought, well, that's not very good.
Right. It's 1 mana, and I have to tap a creature out of mana. That's not that good of a card on the surface. However, we're going to throw in a bunch of 0 mana creatures. We're going to make it so that just having artifacts in play is a nice benefit. That we can sacrifice this to Arcbound Ravager. We can turn on our Mox Opals. We can use our Ornithopters on turn 1 to add additional mana. So we're able to completely flood the board out by turn 2. And all of a sudden, this Springleaf Drum that is a 1 mana that doesn't impact the board is just excellent. It's just going to continue to ramp you. It adds any color, so it allows... We've seen the Affinity deck, like all of these decks are kind of colorless decks, but we've got Thoughtseize in the sideboard, we've got Thought Casts in the main, we've got Aether Grids, you've got Ancient Grudges that you can now flash back. Like all of these different ways that you're going to be able to use playing all 5 colors, despite the fact that there's Glimmer Voids in Mox Opal's main. There aren't a lot of sources for a lot of colors until you throw in Springleaf Drum. And this card just allows for some pretty fantastic plays. Yeah, it's an interesting card in that it's not one that if you're not really well versed in Magic, that you've really been able to know all of the different applications for these type of cards, this would not be a card that would stand out to you. And I think for a lot of newer players, that will definitely reign true, that there are not very many decks that want a Springleaf Drum. However, when you have a deck like Affinity, not only do you want Springleaf Drum, but it's amazing.
Players are just getting set here. Is this another mulligan from Dickmann I'm seeing here?
Yeah, this looks like another mulligan. He's got to have an explosive start because he's playing against a deck that is just really overpowered. I haven't got to see his opening hands to know how bad they actually were. We saw Luis mulliganing a lot of hands that on the surface look keepable. If you haven't played a lot with the Eldrazi deck, you haven't played a lot of Modern in general, you see, I got 3 lands, I've got a 2-drop, I got a 3-drop, I got, some reasonable amount of spells. This seems like a somewhat keepable hand. It's just not good enough for the format.
All right, this one is. So Dickmann's going to keep, and he's going to go ahead and look at the top card of his library, which looks like an Ancient Grudge. He's going to bottom it, whatever it was.
Yeah, if it was Ancient Grudge, that's a pretty tough card to keep because there's a reasonable chance that it's just not going to do anything. Yeah. There are times where Ancient Grudge is great, but there are hands that the Eldrazi deck is capable of where, they're just casting Mimic into Thought-Knot Seer into Reality Smasher, and this Ancient Grudge is not helping me.
All right, so turn 1, Signal Pest there for Dickmann. He also has a Mox Opal, setting himself up for a potentially great next turn. Though I see that Gut Shot in hand again for Floch.
Looks like it was a Mimic off the top, which means with the Eye of Ugin, he's got turn 1 Mimic 2/2 Endless One if he wants, and if he's able to draw an Eldrazi Temple or a Simian Spirit Guide, we have a turn 2 Reality Smasher, activate my Eldrazi Mimic, attack for 12.
What?
Now, there's only oh, so he's not going to go with the Endless One.
No, he did not cast it. He does have one in his hand, though.
Probably thinking 2/2 just isn't big enough in this matchup. He's on the draw, so it's already not going to do as much. If Dickmann has something like an Arcbound Ravager, it just kind of gets shut down, while it's going to be a lot better later in the game.
So Dickmann's decided to play an Ornithopter here. But he was moving along a little quickly, and Floch just said, all right, hold on a second. Before you equip, I may have an effect. He doesn't.
Well, he drew the Simian Spirit Guide, so
He
this
did find it.
is Reality Smasher if he wants it. This Ornithopter is just
What
a
is it, 3 power?
3/2.
3/2 flyer.
Dickmann, is he down to 1 card in hand? You got to go for it. I don't see any reason not to. Yep, here it comes.
Oh, here we go.
Turn 2 Smash.
Boom.
Take 10.
Copy. Crunch. 10U. This is half of your life total, Patrick Dickmann, and you have no reasonable blocks. Down to 10.
There's also a 5/5 trample in play, and Floch still has Dismember in hand. He may have telegraphed it a bit too much by tanking when he had no mana available, and now he's shown the Simian Spirit Guide that it is very likely that he's holding Dismember. But who cares? His hand is so good.
He may just turn it face up, and it might not change anything here.
Yeah, right now Dickmann's plan, I think, has to be hope that this Ornithopter can trade for Reality Smasher, by turning on his Nexuses and making it big enough. But not only can Floch allow him to block and still cast Dismember, the trample means he's still taking the full 5.
Wow. You can sense the tension down there from Dickmann's side of the table. He knows he's up against it here. He's found a Vault Scourge.
He's taking 2 damage to cast that Vault Scourge.
Yes, he just fell down to 8 life, and he's going to play
All
a
right.
Thought Cast for just blue. He finds, I believe, Memnite Signal Pest there. There's a Memnite. And it is a Signal Pest in hand. Ratchet Bomb off the top here. That
He
could
actually
take
can't
out
cast Ratchet Bomb.
He can't cast it. He's only got 1 mana.
What he can do is attack with his Reality Smasher, kill the Vault Scourge. He's going to send Dickmann down to 3, and any mana will mean Ratchet Bomb just is lethal. He can also cast Endless One. That will turn the Mimic into a 2/2, which actually allows it to attack past Memnite if he wants.
That's in addition to the to the Dismember play you outlined, right?
Yeah, I think that's what he's considering right now, and it makes a lot of sense. So he's gonna take the Dismember. I think the right play right here is just Endless One as a 2/2, make my Mimic get an additional toughness.
And crunch.
Yeah. And force some chump blocks.
It looks like he might just be going to attack here for... Oh. Did I speak too soon? Now he's taking a look at the board again. We'll let Floch decide what he wants to do. No, he is going to attack. He's going to offer the trade here. Eldrazi Mimic for Memnite. Dickmann's immediately going to take him up on that as he falls down to 3. Floch's up 2-1 here, looking to be in the finals of another Pro Tour. Remember, he's a champ.
Yeah, that was just a
So that was a mistake there
Yeah.
from Floch. He played it post-combat. He could still have his Mimic here. We'll see if it ends up costing him.
I don't think it will cost him. He is in great shape.
He's in great shape to find himself in the finals against JC Tao and the blue-red Eldrazi deck who awaits him.
Interestingly, the play we were talking about with the Ratchet Bomb killing the 2 potential creatures on the other side, that would also kill his Endless One, so not quite as powerful as it was before, but there's a 5/5 Trampler and your opponent's at 3 life, so
Yeah.
pretty nice position.
Yeah, seems fine. If Floch makes it to the finals, he could be a 2-time Pro Tour champion. He just had one more 5-game match to win.
Yeah, this Mox Opal is not even on right now. Metalcraft is not achieved. All right, this is... Oh, no, it counts itself.
Yeah, it's on.
Yeah.
So here is a Vault Scourge now for Dickmann. Is that enough, though?
When he goes down
He's
to
falling
1.
to 1 here, and a Signal Pest. So how big is this Vault Scourge? It's getting +4, +0?
+5.
+5 thanks to the Mox Opal? Is that enough to save him? Ooh, this is going to get close here.
If the Mimic was still in play...
It might have made the difference here. Oh, man, this is so close. Okay, it's Ratchet Bomb. Like you said, though, that does kill the Endless one if he were to activate it. And he's going to attack with both creatures. So a 2-2 and a 5-5 trample hit the red zone here. Dickmann has to figure out how best to block. He does have the information now that Ratchet Bomb is a possibility. The Vault Scourge on the Reality Smasher makes the most sense here, right? It does.
Well, here's the
kill
thing.
it.
This is what this Ratchet Bomb does, is it kills Mox Opal in addition to Ornithopter. So the Cranial Plating actually is not enough to kill Reality Smasher if he sacks Ratchet Bomb. His Endless one will die. But
so what? Deal with a 5-5, right?
Exactly. So this is a good play by Floch.
And that's going to do it. Ivan Floch wins the match 3-1 over Patrick Dickmann, and Floch is in the finals again. Whew.
We have JC Tao attempting to take out 3 members in a row of face-to-face Channel Fireball on the exact same 75.
Yep.
He's gotten 2 of them.
Wow, incredible stuff. And you can see a big smile from Floch, and it looks like Patrick Dickmann's taking the loss pretty well here as well. Good for him, a fantastic run for Patrick, and it's always fun to see him battle in Modern, whether it's with a Splinter Twin variant of Days of Yore, or these days a little bit more along the lines of Affinity. All right, so that's going to do it for both of our semifinal matches, and that, of course, sets us up for a final. For more information on that, we've got Rich Hagan and the guys at the news desk.
Thanks very much to Marshall and Eric Froelich there. Thanks for guesting there. Efro, great stuff. Very popular indeed. And we have a final. So I've been joined at the desk by Pro Tour historian Brian David Marshall from Inside R&D, Mr. Ian Duke as well. Great to have you here with us, Ian. So let's look at our bracket. First things first. Let's show you how things played out through the morning here. So we began with Shuhei Nakamura of Japan against Jashen Tao of the United States. It was Colorless Eldrazi against Blue-Red Eldrazi. BDM, what happened here?
Well, you know, this was a rematch after JC Tao had been knocked out by Shuhei. Playing in the last round, and JC Tao made short work of Shuhei Nakamura 3-1 with his red-blue Eldrazi deck.
Yeah, in the last round of Swiss, Shuhei could have just said, congratulations, you're in, but instead played it out.
Yes.
But it wasn't enough to actually knock him out. Tao made it in as the 8th seed.
By virtue of having played Shuhei, were good enough that he snuck in the 8th spot. And now is, in great shape.
Yes, he is. All right, so that was Jashen Tao making it through to the semi-finals. He would play the winner of Louis Scott Vargas against Pascal Menard of Canada, the number 5 seed. This was Colorless Eldrazi for Luis, the same deck as Shuhei Nakamura, against Affinity for Pascal Menard. Ian, what went on there?
So I wasn't in the booth for that one exactly, Rich, but I did get to catch some games. Looked like ultimately it was Luis who triumphed over the Affinity deck.
Yeah, 3-2, some mana issues both ways, but in the end, Game 5, the deck behaved. Luis was great, as he always is. Pascal, been on social media, BDM, saying how happy he is with his finish. He's locked up gold, first Pro Tour top 8, tremendous weekend for him.
Yeah, this is a player who was, a fixture on the Grand Prix scene last year, dominant at that level, had multiple Grand Prix wins last season, now has stepped up to the next level of his game and is a Pro Tour top 8 competitor. So, kudos to him.
Absolutely. So let's move on in our bracket because Louis Scott Vargas advanced there to the semi-finals. He would face Jashen Tao. In the bottom half of the bracket, we saw another player on Blue-Red Eldrazi and another player for Team East-West Bowl. This was Andrew Brown, and he was up against the German master Patrick Dickmann playing Affinity. At BDM, we don't always get close Magic, even though we'd always like it. This was not close.
No, this is the proverbial not close. Patrick Dickmann won this in 3 very quick, almost brutal games, as Affinity is able to do sometimes, and just ran Andrew Brown over. But what a great weekend for Andrew Brown and his entire East-West Bowl team. Again, they put 3 players through to this top 8, Andrew, JC Tao, and of course Pascal Menard on the Affinity deck.
Right, so Dickmann was through. That meant our last quarterfinal, which saw Ivan Floch with Colorless Eldrazi from Slovakia up against Frank Lepause. And Ian, this is the 3rd flavor of Eldrazi, Processor Eldrazi.
That's right. This was sort of Frank's own unique take on the Eldrazi deck. Going into the match, actually, I think most of us thought Frank was the slight favorite, with cards like Drowner of Hope being really instrumental in those mirror matches. Ultimately, it was Ivan Floch who did come out on top, but a spectacular series of games, really well navigated by both sides.
Yeah, so Ivan Floch advanced to the semi-finals. That brought us to lunchtime. So, semi-final 1, that was Jashen Tao, an all-American clash against Luis Scott Vargas. And this one, well, it went the distance. But BDM, we talked about mana issues for Luis in the quarterfinal, and in the end, Game 5 is not where you want to be mulliganing to 5 and still not sure whether 5's where you want to be.
Yeah, this is not a great matchup for the Colorless Eldrazi deck, where both decks start on 7. When you don't get to start on 7, it gets a lot worse. And in Game 5, JC Tao, showed his deck's ability to put pressure on his opponent and didn't give Luis any time to recover. Even though mulliganing in this modern format is not as bad, you don't often get to deploy all the cards from your hand.
Right,
So-
that's fair. That's fair. So Jashen Tao moves to the final, and we have just seen our second semi-final. That was Patrick Dickmann on Affinity against Ivan Floch with Colorless Eldrazi. And Ian, we saw the power of the Eldrazi, didn't we?
Yeah, absolutely. It's sort of the flip side of what happened in the quarterfinals there, where the robots triumphed over the menacing Eldrazi. In this case, the Eldrazi were just too strong, and Ivan Floch will advance to the finals.
Yeah, our robot overlords have been utterly and soundly defeated.
That's right.
And now we're just waiting to see which of our Eldrazi overlords are going to be ruling us until we get to Spain.
All right, so we have Jashen Tao against Ivan Floch, United States against Slovakia, Blue-Red Eldrazi against Colorless Eldrazi. Can Tao sweep the 3 teammates on the exact same 75, or will Ivan Floch claim a second Pro Tour title? Much more on the final coming right up, but we've had a huge weekend, 400 players here battling away, lots to talk about, so we're just going to take a few minutes to do some housekeeping with you and wrap up a lot of the mid-season races, if you like, and show you how everyone did through the weekend. So why don't we begin? Since we began with Limited, why don't we take a look at our Draft Master? So this is just across the Pro Tour season, every point you get in the limited rounds of the Pro Tour. So far we've had 12 rounds. So the absolute best you could do is go 3-0 in all your pods. That would take you to 36 points. So the co-leaders you see there, BDM, 30 points. They have gone 10-2, spread across 4 drafts and 2 Pro Tour formats.
We have no 12-0 drafter thus far on the Pro Tour. It gives you an idea of how hard this field can be. Pierre Dajon, Thiago Saporito, Matei, Mike Sigrist, all players you expect to see there. A name that maybe is unfamiliar to a lot of people is Samuel Thummaratnam.
Right.
And, he was a player, actually I was talking to some players out on the floor, and, it's so funny. Magic players with suitcases on Sunday, right? You see them out on the floor all over the place. And there goes Sammy T wheeling his suitcase by a bunch of pros in there, and they're all just like, man, that guy, man, I keep losing to him, Man, that guy, he's always at the top table.
Sam is anywhere from top 64 to top 25 at almost any event you care to mention. Grand Prix, PPTQ, he could be in a 28-player PPTQ, you think, he'll be top 25. He's just super consistent. 300-player RPTQ, he'll be in the top 25 at least. He's just tremendous, but hasn't quite made that leap to superstar status. When you see him in a Pro Tour top 8, don't be surprised. He's really, really very good. So he's one of the co-leaders in the Draft Master. Now, that of course still has 2 Pro Tours to run, as does our next category, the Constructed Master. Once again, it's the same deal. It's just the rounds that you play in Constructed over the Pro Tour in the Swiss, not in the top 8. So anything that happens today, you don't get bonuses for going 3-0 on Sunday. You get $40,000 bonuses for going top 8 at 3-0 on Sunday. So these are just from the Swiss rounds. And as you can see, 48 points. That's 16 match wins for Sam Black there. 15 wins and a draw for Owen Turtenwald. And then your 45s, well, Paul Dean, Reed Duke, Scott Lipp and Ben Stark. Very US-centric field here at the moment, although Paolo Vida-Damarosa and Martin Muller are right there. And no surprise, BDM, to see Martin Muller in that list.
No, absolutely not. Just one of the great young players in the game. Seems to be just getting stronger and stronger, figuring out, the intricacies of playing the game at the highest level and doing it at a very rapid level. Of course, I want to mention, coming into this tournament, Autumn Burchett was the leader in this race,
right.
just a smidge ahead of Sam Black. Sam Black looks like he just duplicated his tremendous performance from Pro Tour Battle of Zendikar. Autumn, unfortunately, did not get past 8-2 this weekend.
Okay, so those races are still ongoing, but one, and the clue's in the name, the Mid-Season Master, that's determined, because this was Pro Tour 2 out of 4. Let's take a look at who is our mid-season master, and Owen Turtenwald has locked up a place at the World Championship later this year. So congratulations to Owen. Great job. A reward for a fine first half of the year.
Shocked I am.
No, you're not. You're not at all.
I mean, only in the sense that there was almost zero chance that we were going to get to the World Championship, and Owen Turtenwald was not going to have a seat in that tournament,
right, somehow or another,
by some method of qualification, whether it was winning a Pro Tour, the at-large bids, North American League Player of the Year, etc. So, but he's the halfway mark Player of the Year.
He is. So congratulations to Owen Turtenwald. We will see him once again at the World Championship, and he can already look forward to trying to go one match better than last time. Made it all the way to the final, really gave us a tremendous match against Seth Manfield, of course. All right, so why don't we turn our attention to around the world? How have regions done at this Pro Tour? Let's begin with the top 10 North American players here at Pro Tour Oath of the Gatewatch. So as you can see there, you've got plenty of people. Those numbers, 3, 4, 5, 7, 8, that just represents the fact that they are in the top 8. Of course, those numbers shift around a little on Sunday. And BDM, there are some fantastic names there, but I do want to mention someone who is not known particularly. That's Oliver Tu in 13th place. He had a great Pro Tour.
Well, yeah, what a great tournament. And, he's following up from a cash finish at his first Pro Tour in Battle for Zendikar. He's qualified for now a couple of Pro Tours in a row because he was qualified for this tournament via the Magic Online Championship Series.
Right.
He, now he's got an invite for finishing in the top 25 at this Pro Tour, has another invite lined up because he's silver, so he's going to be qualified for a while. 18 years old, been playing Magic since he was 8. Mike Sigrist walked by. He's a Massachusetts kid. Mike Sigrist walked by and he's like, that kid, he's really good. So
we're starting to mark your card quite efficiently for future Pro Tours, aren't we? Let's see if we can find someone to talk about on the Asia Pacific slide. I'm sure we can. Here come 10 top 10 players there. Yes, well, of course you've got plenty from Japan, but a couple of names to mention there. 33rd place, Ekarash Sorikup. That's from Team Thailand at the World Magic Cup.
Him.
From the finalists there. And I think that's a fantastic performance. And also, Ian, for all we laud the players who have great success, there are also some very near-miss stories. And Jason Chung of New Zealand, a terrific player, looked like all he needed was a handshake. He didn't get one, and he's on the outside looking in today.
Yeah, really unfortunate to see him miss. I tremendously enjoyed watching him play all weekend long. Really enjoyed his modern deck, the Blue Moon deck. Hopefully we get to see more of that and more of him going forward.
I can, in fact, tell you we're almost certainly going to see more of the Blue Moon deck. It's the Eldrazi may have triumphed this weekend, but they have not necessarily won the war. We have some modern Grand Prix coming up, and I was talking to Jason. It's like, is this a deck you can bring to fight the Eldrazi Menace? And he's like, absolutely. This is a deck, maybe it needs a little bit of adjusting here or there, but this is a deck that I like to play against Eldrazi.
Awesome.
All right, what about Europe then? Who were the top 10 European players who made it across the Atlantic to play here at Oath of the Gatewatch? Well, Ivan Floch and Patrick Dickmann, of course, are in the top 8, so their positions may change. Ivan Floch may go up one in just an hour or so's time. Then you've got the Austrian Oliver Polat-Rotman, and congratulations. I honestly don't think Poland has had two such successful finishes in the same tournament as Bart Lewandowski and Gregor Kowalski. 2 players in the top 24 for what is a tiny Magic nation. Phenomenal performance by the Poles.
And Bart Lewandowski playing, I forget if it's his 3rd or his 4th Pro Tour now, already has a top 16 to his name. Yeah. Now a 17th place finish. This is a player to watch. Very smart, very studious about the game. I had an opportunity to talk to him a couple times, and I can, if I could talk to someone at home, Chris Pikula, he does not listen to Polish black metal. I asked. He said he doesn't.
There we go. So what about the teams then? Because that's been one of our central themes. So many teams have banded together to find the deck that really delivers. Let's look at the top half dozen teams here at the Pro Tour. Let's begin with East-West Bowl. By now, I'm sure you're used to hearing that phrase, because East-West Bowl, a conglomeration of mostly American players. You see a couple of Canadians hanging out there. These were their standings overnight coming in to the top 8. BDM, this is an amazing performance.
Yeah, absolutely. They great finish from this kind of unheralded team. But when you look through that list, you see Ricky Chin, who has a top 8. We see Eric Severson, who had that tremendously exciting weekend at Grand Prix Vancouver. Was that really only just a week ago?
It really is.
Oh my gosh. Ben White's, who was in the mix for the Rookie of the Year race last year. So great young players.
Let's move on to Team Channel Fireball, and Ian. Amazing names here, and Channel Fireball have put up some tremendous numbers.
Yeah, just a star-studded roster. I mean, they absolutely ran the show this tournament. Their Colorless Eldrazi deck, one of the winningest decks throughout the weekend. Just been awesome performances here. Really some exclamation points here. Seeing Shuhei Nakamura make another top 8 after, what was his last one? 8 years ago?
2008.
Yeah, so I mean, I grew up watching him. He's been, one of my idols, so it's great to see him making it back to the center stage. And Luis Scott Vargas, of course, we know has tons of fans out there, as does Paul Cheon, so it was good to see them do well.
All right, on we go to the other half of Channel Fireball, if you will. This is Team Face to Face. They combined together, and of course, they are still standing with Ivan Floch. That is the last representative of the Colorless Eldrazi that those 20 players between them put together. And you look, Andre Strasky at 10-6, the 8th ranked player out of 10 on that team. And that just shows quite how deep they went. Alexander Hayne put in a run that just didn't quite get him to the top 8. And even Jacob Wilson, he ended up 0-4. And still made it to day 2, and still ended up with a winning record on day 2.
And is the player that all 20 members, across the 2 teams, Channel Fireball and Face-to-Face Games, credit with coming up with this Colorless Eldrazi deck that has run roughshod over this field.
Next up, let's take a look at the Pantheon, the team that you were embedded with, BDM, earlier in the week. As we see Jia Chen Tao there briefly, he's gearing up for his final. We'll be with him in a moment. But there's the Pantheon, 12-4, William Jensen, the closest, and he beat Owen Turtenwald in the battle of best friends, roommates. They lived together in Las Vegas.
9th place for William Jensen.
Yeah, a super performance. And who's that in 3rd there, Ian? Do you recognize
Reed
that?
Duke, yeah, my brother. He started off 0-2 this tournament and just rallied back, ended day 1 5-3, did a little bit more winning, and ended up with, really solid result.
Yeah, so great stuff by them. Let's show you Team Eureka briefly. We'll take a look at them, the European team. Oliver Polat-Rotman, the closest there. And then finally, what about Side Games? Because this is the Japanese team. And as you can see, 3 big names, and they all did very nicely. So that's the story of the teams here. The good news is that the players are ready for the final of Pro Tour Oath of the Gatewatch. Ian, I'm going to put you on the spot. Give me a winner. Jia Chen Tao or Ivan Floch? Will it be Blue-Red Eldrazi or the Colorless Eldrazi?
I've been really impressed with the Blue-Red Eldrazi all weekend, but I'm going to go with Ivan Floch here. His play has really, really impressed me. Yeah, that's my pick.
Okay. BDM, how impressed have you been? We've seen Ivan Floch here before. He's been in a final and he's won. But Jia Chen Tao, First Pro Tour top 8. No sign of nerves so far. What is your take on how he'll be feeling coming into this final?
Practiced. He's played the same exact 75 cards in the quarterfinals and the semifinals of this tournament. Now he faces it again in the finals. He's going to be fluent in what he wants to do for his sideboard strategy. He's going to be pretty confident in the matchup. And, he's only lost one match all weekend.
Right. Now, that was yesterday against Shuhei Nakamura. Some people just shrug and go, that's just the order of business. It was, after all, a round of Magic that was waiting to be played. You had a chance to have a little chat with him. Did he particularly enjoy his quarterfinal win?
I mean, we can dramatically throw around the word vengeance, but it was a sweet win for him. I believe the adjective he used to describe it is like, that was sweet to get to play him and beat him in the quarterfinals.
Right. Now, whoever wins this, somewhere in the title, it'll say Eldrazi, and Ian, with your R&D hat on, of course, we know that everyone out there is going to be busy, first of all, thinking, oh, can they be beaten? Well, I mean, they're Eldrazi, they're Titans, they're meant to be quite powerful. But away from flavour, there are going to be answers out there, aren't there, in a field as big as Modern?
Yeah, it's important to keep in mind there's only one tournament has happened so far, and one of the great things about Magic is the metagame can evolve, people can come up with different answers to things. So we'll see how the format plays out, and yeah.
We've heard people talking on the floor about cards like Big Game Hunter to madness out if you kill a Reality Smasher.
Okay, here's the thing. I can be a big game hunter. There's one right over there. It's time for the final of Pro Tour Oath of the Gatewatch.